And the late Nakpana Salifu Dauni has been buried 3 years after his death. He was buried at his private residence in Bimbilla. Before the burial, the Andani family at Bimbilla threatened to unleash chaos on the township if any attempt is made to disrupt the current chieftaincy setup there. The family accused government of attempting to create a parallel structure in the area by authorizing the burial of the late Na Salifu Dauni, chief of Bimbilla or Bimbilla Na.
We have few questions to make. We want to know where the body will be buried. Is he going to be buried as Nakpana or at what? We are demanding whether there are legal documents to prove that the body of late Nakpana should be buried now. Indeed, we are peace-loving chiefs who are interested in having lasting solution to the Nanumba chieftaincy crisis as soon as possible. However, we are not ready to do any illegality. We therefore said notice that we will resist any attempt to bury the late Nakpana in Bimbilla town because he has never been esteemed as Bimbilla now. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, any attempt to bury the Nakpana Dauni in Bimbilla will not bring peace and unity, but rather will aggravate the conflict situation.
The minority in Parliament at an emergency press conference Wednesday afternoon has warned government to tread cautiously on its decision to authorize the burial of the Nakpana in Bimbilla as Bimbilla Na. The burial ceremony, according to the NDC MPs, could derail the fragile peace in that part of the country. Ranking member on the Interior and Defense Committee, who is also MP for Bulsa North, James Agalga, asked the feuding factions to maintain the status quo, awaiting the determination of the Supreme Court on the matter.
Attention of the NDC minority in Parliament has been drawn to the potential threat of the peace in the Nanumba North municipal capital of Bimbilla. Reports emanating from there speak of mounting tension following the decision of the government to authorize the burial of the Nakpana Salifu Dauni in Bimbilla. Our attention has further been drawn to this matter by a statement issued to the media by the family of the current regent of Bimbilla, Yelem Bolgo Na and Dani Dasana. The NDC is very much concerned about these developments in Bimbilla as it has the potential to compromise the peace, order, security and stability of the area. We particularly note the fragile nature of the peace in the area, which itself is underlined by the maintenance of the curfew imposed about 3 years ago, and wish to point out that the action by government with a due consultation with the relevant traditional authority in the area has the potential to breach the peace. Additionally, the inability to spell out in clear terms the condition under which the burial of the late Nakpana would be undertaken further muddies the waters. We take cognizance of the fact that the continued insistence by the Nakpana faction to bury him as Bimbilla Na in Bimbilla has been the single most prominent issue sustaining the crisis. It is worthy of note that the matter of the Nakpana Salifu Dauni is the subject of a pending appeal launched by the same family before the Supreme Court. Information available to us indicate that many people are fleeing from Bimbilla when news broke out that the late Nakpana's remains are on its way to Bimbilla for the burial today. We recall that only last week, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, admonished his appointees to desist from interfering in chieftaincy matters, and that such matters be left to the traditional authorities. What has become of the President's admonition? At the press conference of the family of the acting Bimbilla Overlord Yelem Bolgo Na and Dani Dasana in Accra today on the troubling situation in Bimbilla, the names of some leading political functionaries were mentioned. It is against this backdrop that we wish to call upon the President to walk the talk by ensuring that the chieftaincy dispute in Bimbilla is resolved, devoid of political interference. It is especially important to note, that the status quo ante relative to the chieftaincy of Bimbilla is preserved pending the outcome of the litigation before the Supreme Court. We wish to call on the people of Bimbilla to exercise restraint and take all legitimate, legal, and peaceful means to vindicate their rights so that the peace will continue to reign in Bimbilla for the collective good of the area.
Let us go to the northern region and speak with our correspondent, Martina Bugri. Martina, if you can hear me, what more do we know about this burial?
The burial was held last night. The man was laid to rest. I spoke with the spokesperson for the family, Zakaria Osman, and he says that the burial was done according to the customs and traditions of Manu, and so he was buried as a Bimbilla Na and not as a Nakpana. He says that they didn't have the normal mass grave shooting and all that because the military brought in the body and they didn't want to, I'm quoting what they said, they didn't want to antagonize the military, and so because the military does not know their culture, and so it was brought in, the custodians of those who would normally perform who would arrange the funeral and burial ceremony took over and the burial was done. And so from the family, he was buried as a Bimbilla chief. But I also spoke to the spokesperson of the Dasana family, and they also have a different position. They said he was buried not even as a Nakpana, but an ordinary person, because normally you would have the traditions and customs performed. Somebody must receive the body and then the process is done, but that was not done, and so they saw the whole ceremony as he being buried as an ordinary man. They said probably government should have been more open in communicating with them what was going to happen. The hula baloo that went on wouldn't have gone on. And so they said government has just started a process. They expect government to follow it and ensure that the area is peaceful until every issue is resolved. But he cautioned and actually warned that if the family decides to enskin a para authority in the area, Bimbilla will be too small for the to get.
Now, on that point of the family deciding to enskin a new chief, has the family of Nada only made any indication that they would like to install a regent at least?
When I spoke to Mr. Tumani, he says that for now they would announce the funeral officially and the successful burial. Then they will take it from there.
So what is the Dasana family expecting exactly from government?
They said they expect government to be more open, and they should have a more open dialogue so that they know what is happening. Nothing should be hidden. And so when that is done, it doesn't give room for speculations.
Right. Thank you very much, Martina Bugri, for joining us. She is our Northern Region correspondent following the issue of the burial of Na Salifu Dauni, who was Nakpana, and it's being claimed that he was buried as Bimbilla Na. Now, we've been joined on the line by security analyst Adib Sani. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Mr. Sani, so we'll be speaking to him before the bulletin is over. He is in Bimbilla engaging with the people, the chief and people of the township. Now, it's a very sensitive situation in that part of the country because this began some years ago, really. In 2014, Na Salifu Dauni died. Now, Na Salifu Dauni was a member of a faction that was competing for the skin, if I can refer to it as that, of Bimbilla. That's the Dauni family and the Dasana family, as you heard our correspondent Martin Abogri referred to them as such. Now, this case has been traveling throughout the courts, right from the courts in the northern region right up to the High Court. Is now being contested at the Supreme Court. However, at every stage of the litigation, the Dasana family has been successful. They have won those cases. They have won the rightful seats on the skin. And so a burial of Nadawuni as Bimbilla now would officially authorize his family to put up a regent. Yeah, to put up a regent as an interim chief until a permanent chief is installed. Now, I've been speaking with Osman Tahiru, who is a spokesperson of the Dasana family. He's actually spokesperson for the regents, the current regent of the Bimbilla paramountcy. Let's hear what he has to say about this.
The best we can afford for is to get a leadership in Bimbilla, but not paral authority. Now, the intention of the people of Nakpana is just to ensure that there's paral authority in Bimbilla, and that is what we are looking at. We cannot live to see that. And as we speak now, I have just been told that military have been deployed from the regional level to ensure that the burial is done in Bimbilla. This decision is taken without even the consent of the traditional council. We are asking the president, is that the best way he can manage the situation in Bimbilla? Is that what he means by warning politicians when he came to Dagbon?
Right, so that was Osman Tahiru. He speaks for the Dasana family. Let's go on the phone lines and speak with Adib Sani now. Adib Sani is a security analyst. He is currently in the northern parts of the country. We understand he's been engaging with the people of Bimbilla. Mr. Sani, welcome.
Thank you, my brother.
We also have on the line Albert Yeoyang, who is with the West African Network for Peace Building, one of the parties that have been monitoring the situation on the ground at Bimbilla. Mr. Yeoyang, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning to your listeners.
So let me begin with you, Mr. Sani. You have been to the township of Bimbilla. How would you say the people are receiving what happened last night?
Well, thank you very much. A very good morning to your listeners. The reaction is quite mixed, and there seems to be some simmering tension in the town. However, I had the opportunity to speak with the regent of Bimbilla. He's been categorical about calling on his supporters to exercise restraint and not take the laws into their own hands. He's assured me, as a matter of principle, that we won't have any reported case of any of his followers coming out to fire shots or engage in an activity that is inconsistent with the law. And thankfully, it has happened. The tension has died down a bit. However, there are some fundamental principles that need to be addressed as a matter of principle. So we didn't have any acts of violence recurring in the future. So for now, I mean, things are under control. There's heavy security presence on the ground. It's okay for now.
Mr. Yeoyang, what do you believe are the security implications of this burial of Nadawuni?
Let me say that, let me commend the people of Bimbilla, all the stakeholders, the Peace Council, the security agencies, government, everyone that plays a role, to ensure that there has been a violence-free process. I think that moving forward, there are key things that need to be done. For instance, we need to sustain the security there. And I don't know how really the barrier was done, and I'm not privy to that. That is something that was a concern for the other side. But however that it was done, I think that there is a need for both factions to continue to engage, to communicate. That will
reduce the fears, the tension that probably might be existing at the moment. I think that if they are also appealing to their following to restrain themselves from engaging in any act that could drill the current stability, then that is good. Otherwise, for now, I think the way it is stable, we only hope that it continues that way, and we are praying and we encourage everyone to work towards stability to sustain it so that it can create the opportunity for further engagement with the factions.
Now, Mr. Sani, this issue, this contention, if I can call it that, about the nature of the burial of Nadauni is quite interesting. What do you make of that? The family of Nadauni is saying that he was buried as Bimbilla. The Dasana family is saying that he wasn't even buried as Nakpana, but as a regular citizen. What do you make of this difference that they are having?
Well, I've had a lot of people talking about this issue without really understanding the fundamentals, okay? It goes beyond someone dying and being buried. There's a whole lot of customary processes in that regard, and it's also about legitimization, etc. The burial of this chief came up somewhere in 2014 when he died. Discussions were held between that family and, of course, the late king who was killed and whose son is the current regent. And they agreed in principle to bury him at Nakpa as Nakpana. But 2 days after that discussion, they changed their mind up until the 25th of September when they wrote a letter to the Regional Security Council requesting permission to bury him. Okay. However, the letter was silent about where they were going to bury him, who they are burying, and whether due consultation was done with the regent. Okay, so there was a whole lot of complexing issues surrounding it, which was not very clear. Okay, but as we speak, from what I understand, he's been buried at Nakpa as Nakpana and not Bimbilla, because if he were buried in Bimbilla, that would mean legitimizing him as the chief of Bimbilla, and that would mean his heir to the throne taking over the regency from the current regent of Bimbilla. So, for now, what we know is he's been buried in Nakpa as Nakpana and not the chief of Bimbilla. However, let me also state categorically, without mincing words, that this issue was taken on by the Nigerians, then it went to the High Court, then it went to the Regional House of Chiefs, the National House of Chiefs, and at the moment it has been appealed, okay, at the appeal court. Okay, so for now, the current regent of Bimbilla is the one recognized by law. So whatever we want to do with regard to the burial or consultation, it has to be recourse to the law. So we don't have to be seen as breaking the law. That is why this matter was quite dicey, and for me, I felt more consultation should have been done, and I have always been very categorical about the fact that, look, it is high time we enforce the law. If people disagree on the issue, on an issue, eschew the political expedience, eschew the personality influence that comes to play as a result. Let us deal with these issues as dispassionately as possible. Let us be seen as stakeholders as playing a very neutral role. Let them go to the court. And whatever the decision of the court is, let us follow it up to the letter.
Mr. Sani,
yes.
Let me bring in Mr. Youyang for his final word on this matter. And I'd like that to be, Mr. Youyang, on exactly what Mr. Sani has commented about the involvement of the political leadership of that region in this particular matter. We've cited letters from the Regional Security Council. We know that there was a heavy military presence even as this burial of Nadauni. What is your assessment of the role that government has played in this episode?
Let me say that observing the role of government for a long time, it seems to with the peace-building institutions that anytime there is a regime change, then the dynamics of chiefdoms also change. and very often they are not in the best interest of sustainable peace. Because we expect political parties, for instance, to be impartial in their involvement in chieftaincy affairs. These are traditional processes that they need to be led by the people themselves, and then parties or governments can only facilitate the processes. Of course, coming in a situation like as yesterday, where it requires that there has to be security presence for those things for stability in the area to curtail any untoward behavior. So we think that government or parties should be very impartial in terms of their involvement in traditional affairs and allow the factions to lead the processes. Of course, there are always other institutions that are there, like the Peace Council, civil society institutions like UNEP, that can play facilitative roles to guide the parties to agree on some outcomes that can be sustainable. Because we can always manage situations, but then in terms of sustainability, it can take several years down the line, and then the dynamics can change. And that is why, and I even think that the political parties, parties in government, opposition, should be involved in all these processes, so that at the end, if any of them is behaving in a negative manner, then it can be seen and addressed almost immediately, and that can enable these chiefdoms to be sustainable. Otherwise, that can be complicated, and it makes it very difficult for third parties like civil societies and Peace Council to intervene.
Right,
thank
you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Yeoyang. And Mr. Sani, your final words. What do you think is the motivation for any politician to be involved in a chieftaincy dispute?
Well, like I indicated, some of them use it for political expedience. They use it to get votes during electioneering. All sorts of promises are made to the people. Sometimes politicians promise and over promise. And some of these issues is not peculiar to just the people of Bimbilla. It has happened in Dagong, it has happened in Bunkungu and other places all across the country. And I find it very irresponsible, and I think it's high time the right thing is done. I think it's right time for the laws to be enforced. I think it's right time we look at some of these issues holistically, including the United Nations Development Program definition of human security that includes environmental security, food security, health security, political security, and all that. By doing that, I'm sure we should be able to harness the socio-economic and geopolitical and even the cultural deficits that gives rise to some of these conflicts across the country.
Sani and Mr. Albert Yeoyang. Mr. Sani is a security analyst who's currently at Bimbilla. Mr. Yeoyang is with the West African Network for Peace Building.